5 minutes to complete. So 5 minutes on the do now, filling out a typical SCOTUS chart. Go ahead and get started. What? Three more minutes on the do now. Ninety more seconds. Okay, let's go ahead and come back together as a group. So looking at today's do now, what are some of the most important things that we need to know about Tinker versus Des Moines, ISIS?
I said the court ruled that schools cannot limit free speech of students unless it's disruptive.
Mhm. Great. What else is important about this court case? Build on that, Nyasha.
This court case was important because it started answering questions about the extent that the First Amendment has, like, in relation to like symbolic speech and stuff like that.
Yes, the key is that symbolic speech. Great. So we are going to be spending today talking about freedom of speech in schools. So I want you guys to transition to page 2 of your class packet. And I'm going to give you 4 minutes, 3 minutes. You're going to read this passage from the news article and then answer the question, were the planned student walkouts in support of gun control legislation protected by the First Amendment? And then be prepared to explain. So you're going to have 3 minutes to read this passage about these walkouts, and then we will come together to discuss. 3 minutes, page 2 of your classwork. Go ahead and get started. Ninety more seconds on page 2. Okay, that is 3 minutes. Is this planned student walkout in support of gun control legislation protected by the First Amendment? Can I hear from Erica?
I think based off the ruling from the homework that it's wouldn't be considered like protection because it was disruptive to the school environment and therefore like that took away from the movement and made it more disruptive than progressive. But I feel like the schools, in my own opinion, the schools should have been like okay with it and seen that it's towards a bigger purpose than like education, but that's just my opinion.
Mhm. So what I hear you saying is that technically it goes against this idea of it can't discriminate or disrupt the school day, but we also have in the First Amendment freedom of assembly. So this is another one of the, so it's like both freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. So we are going to transition into today's documents. Something I really want to highlight, I know if you guys finish early, you'll move on from one set of documents to the other. For today, please just focus on the majority and the dissenting opinion because we have to get through those two documents in order to go to the next. So if you finish this early, do not move on to the next documents, reread and check out your annotations for the first two. Let me share my screen. Okay. So you are going to read document 1, which is the majority and dissenting opinion for Tinker versus Des Moines. And I want you to use this focus question. What is the heart of the disagreement between the majority and dissenting opinion in Tinker versus Des Moines? So when you read the majority and dissenting opinions, what are they actually arguing about? Are they arguing about students' free speech, or are they arguing about something different? You're going to have 7 minutes to read these two opinions and answer that question on the next page. 7 minutes. Go ahead and get started. You have 5 more minutes left. 3.5 minutes left. Two more minutes. Thirty more seconds. Again, do not move on. Make sure you're really answering this question. Okay, let's go ahead and come back together. Before we get started with talking about the Supreme Court case, I want us to remember the historical context. How did the American public in general react to the Vietnam War? What do you guys remember about the Vietnam War and the way people felt about it? I will take a hand. Nyasha, go for it.
I remember the war was highly controversial because the reasoning why the United States got into the war in the first place, it was like confusing, and the citizens didn't want to be involved in the war because they felt like the deaths that were adding up was very pointless and it was hurting the community as a whole. So there was a lot of protests going against it. And so people tried to diminish that because it was saying it was ruining the nationalism of like the country and stuff like that.
Awesome. So with that historical context in mind, What is the real disagreement between the majority and dissenting opinions in Tinker versus Des Moines? What are they actually debating about and what are they concerned over? I'll take a hand. What do we think? What do we think they're actually divided over? Can I hear from Janaya and then Isis?
They debated whether the students wearing the wristbands was a distraction to the school or whether it was a way to protest.
Awesome. Build on that, Isis.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Erica, go for it.
I really said the same thing as them, that the main argument is whether or not it's a distraction. But what you made me think of is maybe the people who thought it was like civil were ones that like are more against the war and like therefore thinking it's okay for the kids to do this in a civil way. And then the people who thought it wasn't okay thought that because they want America to be united in wartime and think that they should have certain standards held to them on speech during wartime in order to keep everyone together.
Awesome. In the Zoom chat, are these judges debating whether or not students have free speech, or are they debating over what the students are saying? So is this a debate about free speech, or is this about what is being said? Go ahead and share in the Zoom chat. Awesome. Looking at the Zoom chat, we are united that this is not an issue of whether or not students get to practice free speech. Something Emmanuel and I just said over here is if this was about a less controversial issue, it might not have even ended up in the Supreme Court. But now we're going to transition our attention to cases that where students' freedom of speech might be limited. So I'm going to have you guys transition to the next set of documents with this framing question. Does the precedent set in Tinker versus Des Moines protect students who wear anti-LGBTQIA plus t-shirts to school? So does this precedent of Tinker versus Des Moines protect people or protect students that wear these anti-LGBTQIA plus t-shirts to school? You're gonna have 7 minutes to read about 2 different cases, one in Connecticut, one in San Diego, where this debate came up. 7 minutes, and then we'll come back for a whole group discourse. 7 minutes is on the clock. Go ahead and get started. 4.5 minutes left. Make sure you're looking for the differences between Tinker versus Des Moines in these two examples. Two more minutes. One more minute. Be prepared to discuss in the Zoom chat before we come back whole group. Okay. So first in the Zoom chat, I want us to make sure we know the difference. What is the difference between protecting a student's freedom of speech when they're speaking out against the Vietnam War versus protecting? They don't. They rule against the students. So what's the difference between these two examples? Sorry, That I said that's super, super complicated. In the Zoom chat, we're all going to share. What is the difference between speaking out against the Vietnam War and speaking out against the LGBTQIA plus community? Share in the Zoom chat. Please chat me privately, since this is a interesting topic. No. I'll say that one more time. What is the difference between speaking out against a war versus speaking wearing an anti-LGBTQIA plus t-shirt? Waiting on a few more responses. Okay, can I hear from Ariana, then Erica, finishing up with Emmanuel? So Ariana, Erica, Emmanuel.
I said that the war doesn't target specific people that we like see every day, while like people in a school can probably like more closely relate to being part of the LGBTQ community, and like they usually like affect them more because like they're actually in their presence and physically there.
I agree with Ariana. I said in one, they're peacefully protesting a war. In another, they're using hate speech to diminish and protest a group of people.
I agree with both of them. And they're different because with these two examples, the children are like attacking one specific group of a community. It's kind of like it can be identical to racism in a way where you're specifically targeting one group, while in a war you're not necessarily targeting a soldier's civil rights, you're just targeting the war in general.
Okay, I'm going to have Emmanuel build on that with what we discussed. What part of the Constitution did you use to support your argument?
I use the 14th Amendment because, again, with the whole going back to racism, like an American citizen should have equal rights to everyone, right? Right. So, like, obviously, since they're a part of our community as a country, they should have those rights as well, which they are being discriminated against.
Great. So the reason why I asked Emmanuel to root it back into the 14th Amendment was we had just discussed this, in that there is a constitutional basis for why this type of speech or freedom of speech is not allowed. It is up to the US government to use the Constitution to protect individual rights of its citizens. And this is a case where people were using the freedom of speech to go against specific individuals and limiting their civil rights. Great. We've heard basically the same idea in a variety of voices. I know that this is a really interesting topic to a lot of you. If you would like to build on what you've already heard, you can go and raise your hand now. I want to make sure I give everybody the opportunity to share. It's okay if you don't want to share. I just want to make sure because I saw a bunch of different responses and hands. Okay. So now let's stretch it. When should freedom of speech be limited? I gave Emmanuel a couple of different examples. Should students in public schools be able to fly Make America Great Again flags? Should they be allowed to fly Confederate flags? there are a bunch of different things where in theory we want to say freedom of speech, but when we think about it, it might not be as much what we want to practice. Naisha, go ahead.
I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for saying this, but I think freedom of speech, if it's going against another person's right and it's trying like suppress another person's right, then I feel like it should be limited, because a lot of people would say like they're pro-life, but then they support a person being gunned down for like carrying a bag of Skittles. And I feel like those two ideals don't align. If you're diminishing another's person right that's given in the Constitution that they so happily follow, but then they go against a person's right to live, I feel like those two don't add up and is contradicting everything they quote unquote believe in.
Mhm. Some people have even used the First Amendment as an excuse to not wear a mask when they go in public. Sorry, I have Emmanuel muttering things to me, which are true. But yeah, so like the freedom of speech is something you can use for a lot of different things. And one of my favorite things that my dad has ever told me that I think goes with this is just because you have the right to do something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So like just because you have the right to fly these flags that make people uncomfortable, just because you have the right to do these different things, it doesn't mean that you are doing the quote unquote right thing. So that's always an interesting point in terms of American politics, is when we see this friction between these ideas, like freedom of speech. It's the First Amendment for a reason. It is the first of the Bill of Rights. Clearly it mattered to the founders of the country that freedom of speech be the first thing that is protected. The very first thing the Bill of Rights mentions, freedom of speech. But we're talking about these different instances where freedom of speech is important, but maybe we should be considering other things as well. Tomorrow, we are going to zoom in on freedom of the press, so that'll be fun. So we're going to continue our exploration of the First Amendment. I've already told you guys about your Thanksgiving break work. And that's it. There's nothing else that's due. So yeah, when that goes live either tonight or tomorrow, that's all you guys have to do. I'll see you in class for tomorrow. Let's go ahead and transition to our exit ticket. Remember, you must turn in your exit ticket and your classwork packet before you leave the Zoom call. Once I see both of those things submitted, I will let you guys know that you're ready to go. Your exit ticket must be 3 sentences. You must have a thesis, so an answer to the question, a piece of evidence to support your thesis, and then your third sentence is, this evidence supports my thesis because. So you need 3 sentences for a body paragraph. You can go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, feel free to chat me and let me know. And I will let you know when you are free to go. Okay, Ariana, once you submit your classwork packet, you're free to go. Erica, you're free to go. Maddie, you're free to go.
Bye, Miss Wild.
Bye, Maddie. See you tomorrow. Janiyah, once you submit your classwork packet, you're free to go. Naisha, once you submit your class packet, you're free to go. Have a good day. See you tomorrow.